our State of Football Hall of Famer who leads the league in appearances here, I think, on the State of Football each and every Thursday. He's Neil Stratton of Inside the League. We welcome him here on this Turkey Day. Happy Thanksgiving to you, Neil, down there in the Houston, Texas area.
Welcome, guys. Hey, guys, it's good to see everyone. Still working on Thanksgiving. I'm going to try to talk a lot to try to work off the calories I'm going to put on it later today. So if
I'm telling you,
fast, slow me down.
Oh, I'm telling you, I'm going to be back at it again tomorrow morning right here, about 5 pounds heavier, maybe 10, halfway in a food coma. But, we're getting it started here for the people. No days off here on the State of Football. So we appreciate you joining us in here, Neil. And, a busy week. What's going on from the industry side that, of course, you cover so well at InsideTheLeague.com?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things that I've been kind of thinking about is, how do we turn this year into a positive? I mean, we're rolling towards the end of 2020, and I think we can all be thankful for that. I'm going to be asking, and maybe y'all could even enlighten me because y'all are both evaluators as well. How does NFL scouting improve based on this year's experiences? Are scouts going to say, maybe just going to games is really all I need. Maybe I don't need to go to practices as much. Maybe NFL teams are going to say, I need more seasoned evaluators so they can pull more out of the NFL liaisons, the recruiting people via Zoom, via kind of online methods. Maybe we don't need to travel as much. I don't know what the answer is, but that's something we're going to be asking scouts about for the Friday wrap. And it's something that kind of intrigues me because the scouting industry, as you both know, is always evolving and we're always seeing new things. Last year, we didn't have pro days. We still had a draft. We didn't have players come in on a trial basis per se, although we did have undrafted free agents. And I'm just interested in seeing how it's going to evolve this year and how scouting may look different in the future because of what we dealt with this year.
Yeah, some interesting points that you bring to our attention here. The one thing I will say hearing you talk is the practices. I think going to the practices at the end of the day are actually more valuable than going to the games because you do get the access to the film and you could sit there and break down anyone and everyone and have access to all that film. So I think, that's a lacking component. And then, the games, being on the field, hanging out, talking to the coaches, doing the, sizing them up, the eyeball test. I think that's, a huge missing component. Now, can we do a lot of our interviews via Zoom? Well, hey, I think that's going to have to be a staple because COVID, I believe, will be, everybody says, let's get through 2020. But I got news for you. Till 2021, COVID's not disappearing. So there's going to be a lot of this protocol implemented, I believe, moving forward. I see Zoom is here to stay. And John, maybe you've got something to weigh in. Who's, he's conducting scouting meetings still with this team via Zoom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, in our situation, a free agent class from last year that never got to play on the field is now having to be judged against a, pending free agent class, of players that have played in our league, but also the idea of you now have the XFL kids that were kind of holding off, right? Didn't want to sign right away because they were hoping for, workouts, but now none of that ever happened. So those guys are available. The extra kids that didn't get NFL opportunities because we missed out on rookie camps and so on and so forth, this year, so it boils down to, are you going to do a lot more kind of film and production, and just look at what you can, kind of that takes the noise out of the room in terms of you don't need to travel to watch film. You don't need to interview a kid, to see their production. But does that then hamper that first year redshirt sophomore player, the junior, the JC kid, his first year jumps out, and has a couple of really good games, but that's all you have, sort of on that kid. Will be interesting to see how many of those guys get properly evaluated and jump out to the draft. And then the thing we saw last year, which was, it was not a good year, to be a small school player. And how will that get affected, in this cycle, kind of as well, because you just know if we have an added group of underclassmen and they come out, and then we have an organized, group of, small school guys who are looking for opportunities. They're not expanding the draft. That it would seem unlikely, that you would expand the combine, even if you're shying away from some of these pro days and how you're doing things. So, I think if you're going to delve back and say a lot of this is going to be, film and production, because right now, the one area that we've said even before COVID, but they've doubled down on it with COVID, is a lot of those scouting jobs have started to go to folks that they can just teach it to, tell them fundamentally what they need to do, and then they send them out on the road, which does not encourage, your own thinking process, your own thoughts, your ability as a veteran guy to watch a kid at practice, listen to something, hear something about a player, and instantly be able to say, okay, that relates to the last 35 guys, I've heard about with that kind of background. We need to ask these questions, or we need to check out these things. We need to talk to the right person. Because on every staff in college football, there's somebody who's going to shoot you straight, and there's somebody who's going to put it on a tilt one way or the other, depending on their flavor or, like their stance on the player. So you could get the best review, you could get the worst review, or you could get kind of closer to the reality review. And you know what it takes to understand how to get that? Having those relationships, having been in and out of those programs, talking to them at least, once a year in the spring and fall, and then they trust that they're sharing that info. If you're going to the wrong source, you get the wrong information. And I think that's part of the process here that we've all been missing since everything got shut down last year, because there's really been a very much a lack of flow of communication and information dating all the way back to last March.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, speaking of communication and information, if you log on regularly to the Succeed in Football blog this week, you had a highlight of some of the top personnel directors, I think from the collegiate level. My guy from Rutgers was on the list. Our buddy Cody from Northwestern was on the list. He did a great job profiling some of these up and coming superstars.
Yeah, it's fun to work with these guys. And I know y'all know a lot of them. You mentioned two of them, Rick. These guys are full of energy. They're very highly professional. It's just there's only 32 teams and only so many jobs. Only typically 2 to 3 scouting assistants hired per team, and that's not every year. It kind of depends on what kind of turnover a team has, and so there's limited opportunities. One of the things that we're seeing, however, is that colleges are valuing these people that are in-house a lot more. We're starting to see the salaries kind of bump up. We're starting to see former NFL scouts come in and work for schools, some of the bigger schools, and really kind of bring their techniques and that kind of their strategies and that kind of thing. And I have some friends that are with search firms at different schools, and one of them said, "Hey, listen, I need to learn these guys," and that's what kind of prompted this blog post. It was an interesting one to put together and a lot of fun to put together, because it kind of gave me a chance to reward some of these guys that are I'm always talking to. They're always trying to develop things. They're showing up at symposiums. They're coming on our Zooms, probably coming on y'all's Zooms as well, Rick, and trying to learn everything they can, really passionate about it, really pursuing it. And the least you can do is to try to kind of honor their efforts a bit by giving some mention, in my small corner of the world. So it was fun. For this week, we're kind of going in a different direction for the Succeed in Football blog. We had Blake Bedingfield. I think y'all know Blake. Blake's a great guy, really great on Zoom, very expressive. Always tells some great stories. And he was on with us on Monday night, kind of giving 50 sleepers, guys he has seen, mostly on the small school level. But and when I say small school, obviously FBS, but kind of mid-tier kind of players, Sunbelt, those kind of guys. And a couple players from smaller schools that maybe didn't play this year, but he remains interested in them, is able to watch their film. He had 50 guys that he talked about on Monday. We'll break out 5 of them for the blog this week and talk about them. So we don't really talk about the nuts and bolts, the actual players that are going to be drafted every year. But this is our week to kind of geek out and talk about some guys that may be risers and that may surprise, especially on day 3, and who knows, maybe even day 2 with a good spring may wind up, kind of zooming up the board. So we'll do a little bit of that this week. Probably have that posted either today or tomorrow morning first thing.
Oh, very cool stuff. Succeedinfootball.com if you want that information. And then, the other thing I wanted to touch base with you, because we're getting asked about it now frequently, and they're getting ready to start up. It's somewhat of a surprise to me, but the Fan Control Football League is going to be a 2-month season, 4 teams. I know they recently just had a tryout this past weekend down in Atlanta. From my understanding, players are going to be compensated, not much, but they will receive something. Do they stand a chance, Neil, with the Spring League fiasco? What happened there? What transpired down in San Antonio? Does the Fan Control Football League now deal with some of that backlash, or do you kind of view this as a separate entity?
I'm excited about the FCF. I think they're looking at this as an experiment. They're all but wearing lab coats. I mean, they're being very careful about everything they do, and they're going to have this in a bubble. The thing about SCF that's different, and I know people that are on this broadcast that are following this are interested in the game behind the game and kind of how a team's constructed and all those kind of things. I know that y'all are going to talk about how to build a team on Friday night, and that sounds riveting. That sounds fascinating to me because I love that kind of stuff. Yeah, the FCF, the players on the teams will change every week based on fan voting. The plays that are called, the players that play, all those kind of things are up for fan decision making as part of the online platform they have, and so it's an interesting thing. Again, these guys are not obviously your college stars that or the NFL is competing with to sign these guys, but they're all competent players, and it's going to be a way of watching football that's very different. It's almost like Madden in real life, and I know that people talk about that, and this isn't the first time that kind of comparison has been made, but I'm excited to see it, and all their games will be broadcast on Twitch. There's not going to be any secrets about how and where to find their games and all those kind of things. I think, especially after week 2, week 3, when fans get to watch them, to play them, players kind of get to learn them, get to know them a little bit more. It's going to be really interesting to watch how the teams evolve and how the votes are cast and what plays go on. I mean, I don't think they're going to be throwing long on every down, but maybe every other down. I mean, you hand this to the fans, it's going to be a little more exciting. So it'll be fun to watch, and I'm excited to kind of see what happens. And again, as Rick, you especially have your thumb on the pulse of the direction of football and how technology is changing it. And that's one thing I've always valued from our relationship is how tuned in you are to that, and I always learn from you in that regard. I think this could be a direction that we haven't seen, and is eventually maybe even have implications in the NFL. As a purist, I hate to say that, but it's still true. And ultimately, this is entertainment. This is about trying to keep people glued to the TV or whatever their viewing mode is of choice. And so there may be some implications here that we see down the road in the NFL. I don't know, but this is their chance to kind of see it kind of on the ground level. I'm really excited. It's starting in about a month or so, and month, I guess maybe 2 months. I'm not sure exactly about the schedule, but it will be a lot of fun. I know they'll be kind of assembling the rosters and training and that kind of thing soon. So something to keep on your calendar and to be looking for. I think it's going to be a pretty exciting thing.
I'm intrigued. I hope it works, and I think the XFL, if they ever do come back, could probably take a note or two from what they're doing, because you take a look at this modern day era where you have the YouTube sensations and the overnight Instagram success. Well, now you've got a league here who's kind of gearing towards the football audience, but then also incorporating, like, I think Mike Tyson and Richard Sherman are 2 of the coaches, I believe. They got some other celebrities involved. So, and from my understanding, that how it does differ from the Spring League, at least, is they've rented out the entire hotel. So there will be no other, public outsiders coming into the hotel. John, is this a concept you think can work here in the COVID era?
Yeah, I think that, the interesting part of it is what you're saying. Like when you take everybody kind of behind the scenes, with this, and you're saying to them, like, okay, hey, in one area, literally they are repeating what a video game, sort of gives you in terms of, hey, we're going to let you pick the color scheme, we're going to let you pick what the logo or the whatever team, type thing is, and then, hey, now we're picking the roster and how do you want to do it? And, things like that. It does give a different optic to it. And the other optic that you talked about, there are some of the guys that we've seen that you could be maybe not just the prototype for true professional football, but the guy that has 300,000 followers and is a good player. Mm-hmm. That guy now has a chance to where he's using kind of both sides of the business, to manipulate his way into being the featured player. Right. So it is a kind of football meets Tron, kind of weird, kind of scenario there to say like, hey, you could take a guy and suddenly make him the featured player on the team, even if he's not considered the featured player on the team. So like all of those things of the interaction with the guy who caught 7 passes. Okay, that's great. And he doesn't interact and he's not socially media savvy. Mm-hmm. And the other kid who had 1 catch for 30 yards might end up being the star of the show because he's all over the place posting 24/7, right? I mean, like look no further. We brought that kid to camp last year who's got probably the most followers in the history of pro sports as a kicker. That kid would dominate. I mean, it wouldn't be shocking if he's in that league. Because if you're that smart to be able to kind of, do every time you're doing something, you're able to link it and connect it on social media. Like if Starbucks wanted to do that with any of us, we'd welcome, brought to you by, we're good.
It's a fascinating concept though. Like when you think about it, for a startup league, you're using the players now to help promote draw those viewers to the Twitch. I would imagine they should allow these guys to text and tweet and do all that in game, because it's like so opposite of the grain of what NFL does that people would love that.
And well, that's why I said that if you look in the end zones where they're putting those big billboards or whatever, don't tell me that you can't then be creative enough to connect with one of these social media platforms. And when they score or when they make the play, come do your little 15-second TikTok dance, literally, on there and have it going live as you're going.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm more than willing to volunteer Neil to come on each week and do a TikTok dance as a wrap up.
Oh, you didn't know
that's selfless of you, John. I really appreciate that, but thanks for letting me.
You didn't know that that's how we're ending the show today. Neil didn't get the memo. Well, hey, let's put a ribbon on today's show, fellas. Neil, you've got the Friday wrap coming out tomorrow. Of course, Moving the Chains book. If you want to learn more about the NFL draft process, that book is as valuable as it's ever been. Whether you're a player, an agent, a parent, you want to know inside the draft process. Get Moving the Chains, available on Amazon. Of course, Scout Speak. We've got a couple copies left. If you subscribe to the NFL Draft Bible, if you go all access, we'll send you a free copy of Neil's book, Scout Speak. It just recently came out, also available on Amazon. And if you're not signed up for the Friday wrap, go to InsideTheLeague.com. What will they find there tomorrow in their inbox, Neil?
Well, we'll talk to NFL scouts and maybe some agents about some talk. We haven't really nailed down the topic yet. I think we're going to look at, how, again, as we touched on earlier, how how scouting has changed with COVID. I think we also maybe talk to some agents about, will they be sending their players to non-Senior Bowl? Will Senior Bowl be the only all-star game for that top 150, top 200 players? I don't know. And as a member of the board at CGS, I hope not. I certainly am a big proponent of the CGS, but I just want to try to get in the minds of the major agencies out there and kind of find out what they're thinking.